Let's bring in Jeff McLane, Eagles beat writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Jeff, can you give us the mood at the Eagles camp the last couple of days?
Well, it's been very raw. I mean, you have certainly players that can't really understand and have been shocked and appalled by what Riley Cooper had said at the Kenny Chesney concert last month. You have a lot of leaders trying to kind of keep control of the situation, keep the team together, and then you also have a group of players that are certainly not ready to forgive and forget McCoy. So you right now you just potentially have a situation in which the locker room could be divided, and again, raw being the apt term here, I think, because it's only been a few days, and this thing is really yet to play out.
Jeff, do you feel like the players were aware that Riley Cooper's every movement was going to be chronicled? And when I ask that, I mean, do you think they were aware that the cameras would be on them if they were the first ones over there, patting Riley Cooper on the back, laughing with him, joking around with him?
You're saying at the concert that the players were patting him on the back?
No, do you think? I mean, they weren't, clearly, just based on the reports I was reading, that Riley Cooper was essentially ostracized at this last practice out there. There weren't a lot of teammates around him. Do you feel like they were aware?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there wasn't much contact there. I remember one play in which he kind of got tangled up with the cornerback, Brandon Boykin, who is African American, and they kind of slapped high fives, low fives to be exact, when he got up. But other than that, there wasn't really much contact. LaShawn McCoy said that he had yet to speak to Cooper and pointed out that I don't think anyone's really talking to him today. Cooper Doe did say after practice that he's had a number of players come up to him and show them his support and say that they're with him. But from what I've gathered, talking to a number of players, they may never speak to him again, or don't think they will.
Are players talking off the record about this? Is this something they're willing to get into but not be quoted on?
Yeah, I mean, that was my story. Essentially, when I posted it yesterday, and we updated it for today's paper. I mean, I have 3 players that we granted anonymity because the sensitivity of the subject, and because really, honestly, in the NFL, players don't have much leverage to kind of speak out against perhaps the team or in sensitive subjects such as these, because they aren't, their contracts aren't guaranteed, and players wanted to speak freely. So we permitted them that, and basically, I wanted to kind of get a real gauge on how the locker room felt. On Wednesday, the Eagles gave us the team leaders, and they did their best, Michael Vick among them, to calm the situation and basically said that Riley made a mistake and we're ready to move on. But I had known from talking to players that there were a number that weren't ready to move on.
Does this get worse before it gets better?
Well, I mean, it depends how much longer they keep Riley Cooper. I don't know. I don't want to make too much of it. I think there's a chance that this could pass over and the players can kind of forget. I think that's possible. But a lot of it may have to do with winning. It may have to do with how Cooper performs. I mean, right now he's the starting wide receiver opposite Deshaun Jackson because Jeremy Maclin suffered a season-ending injury. And if Cooper performs well, then no problem. What happens if he drops a big pass in a game? What goes on then? What happens in the locker room then? So that's something the Eagles have to really consider here in the next few weeks, and then they have to kind of gauge if it's still if there's still some sort of division within the locker room as they go forward.
Do you get the sense, Jeff, talking to Jeff McLane from the Philadelphia Inquirer, do you get the sense that the Eagles front office and Chip Kelly are resolved to keep Riley Cooper at least through the preseason and see how this plays out?
I think they may have to because they acted swiftly when they said that he was going to be fined. But to reverse themselves so quickly, number one, would probably not look good. It made them look very indecisive. And two, I don't know what this means in terms of the NFLPA and how they get involved and whether they file suit against them. I mean, this was something that Riley said while he wasn't working. He was at a public event. Wasn't said in the workplace. So I think they have to consider all those other issues as well. But the NFLPA, in turn, has to consider whether they want to represent a player that said something that the majority of their the players that they represent probably don't agree with and probably don't wouldn't want the NFLPA standing up for.
Would a stiffer penalty, Jeff, have changed the outcome of all this? If, say, he was suspended for 2 games, would people have a different perception?
Well, are you saying people, or are you saying the players?
I'm saying the players in the locker room. Do you think that?
Yeah.
Do you think that a slap on the wrist, such as it was, even though it probably was a hefty fine, do the players look at that as maybe being a little too light?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had one player say to me that Andy Reid would have done much more than a fine. So the sense I've gotten from some players is that they thought it wasn't enough. I think some players also, well, not as many players, but I think if they had released him at the time, it would have, in the long run, the Eagles would have had much more easier time handling this. And from my vantage point, they handled this from a PR perspective and not from a locker room one. And that's why I think probably he should have been released, not because of what he said, but more so because it was going to affect the locker room. And ultimately, this team's here to win football games, and that's what the organization should have thought of first.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, thanks.
That's Jeff McLane, Philadelphia Inquirer, Eagles writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer on the Philadelphia Eagles here on the Dan Patrick Show.